Manx Radio's update with Lewis Foster.
Fastamai, good evening, it's 5 o'clock and welcome along to Update on Manx Radio for Friday the 19th of July 2024. If you're heading home from work ready for the weekend or getting ready for a night shift, we're here with a half-hour roundup of news on and from the Isle of Man today. Coming up, have you been affected by the IT outage today? We'll recap how GP surgeries and some travel has been impacted. We have the latest from the inquest into the death of a prisoner, and the company behind plans for an offshore wind farm has launched a series of public consultation open days. We'll also keep you posted on anything to watch out for travel-wise, and as ever, your thoughts always welcome 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. Now, though, let's join Siobhan Fletcher for the Man Benham News headlines. Fastamai, Siobhan.
Fastamai. The jury at the inquest into the death of a serving prisoner has recorded a verdict of suicide. Christopher Peter Corkill, who was 46 years old, was found dead in his cell at the Isle of Man prison on the 24th of February last year. A deal's been reached between Braddon Commissioners and the Department of Health and Social Care over the Roundhouse's access road, with a cost agreed for the sale. The leisure facility has been the cause of a row between the two authorities since it opened in January. The manager of a coffee shop, who pocketed more than £17,000 of the branch's takings, has been jailed for 16 months. John Gelling stole the money from Costa Coffee in Ramsey while doing the banking. Further afield, a huge IT outage is still causing widespread disruption around the world. A faulty software update from CrowdStrike has affected Microsoft users everywhere. The firm says it's delivered a fix, but disruptions continuing at airports, transport hubs and GP surgeries. The UN's top court says Israel's settlement policies and exploitation of natural resources in the Palestinian territories are in breach of international law. The ICJ has issued a non-binding ruling on its 57-year occupation. And despite the urging of senior influential Democrats, Joe Biden's campaign team insists he'll keep running for president. He's currently getting over a bout of COVID at his home, and his aides say he'll be back on the campaign trail next week. They're your headlines. I'll be back with your news at 6.
Gurumayed. Thank you, Siobhan. Now the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. This evening and tonight will remain cloudy with extensive hill fog and the continuing threat of some patchy drizzle and coastal mist or fog. The moderate to fresh southerly wind will ease slightly later tonight, with minimum temperature no lower than 12 degrees. Tomorrow will be cloudy with some showery outbreaks of rain possible during the morning before turning persistent and heavy at times during the afternoon and evening before eventually clearing overnight. The light to moderate southeasterly wind will swing to the northwest and freshen during the evening with highs of 16 degrees. Much of Sunday then will be dry and bright with some sunshine, which will turn hazy as cloud spreads across the island. With a small risk of one or two showers developing later, the light to moderate westerly wind will back to the southwest with maximum temperature around 16 degrees. Sunset tonight is at 9:37 p.m, sunrise tomorrow at 5:13.
Manx Glass and Glazing don't just do the big jobs. It's easy to repair broken greenhouse glass at Manx Glass and Glazing. For greenhouse glass cut to size, call 674 573.
TE Cubban provide new memorial stones, grave renovations, new inscriptions and fire hearths. Visit us at Hope Street, Castletown, or at Broadway, Douglas, or call 844 440. TE Cubban, here when you need us.
Ambitions Recruitment Consultants, covering all business sectors in the Isle of Man. Register online or email your CV to info@ambitions.co.im or ring 614 841. Ambitions, for all your recruitment needs, however big or small.
We all need peace of mind. That's where Peace of Mind Manx Will Writing Services can help you. From just £149 plus VAT. Call 671 001 or go to peaceofmind.co.im.
Most builders start with a hammer and saw. Manx Construction start with ideas and imagination. For new build, extension or home office, Manx Construction offer full service from planning to completion. Call Tony on 452 688.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
And the time now 5:05. The jury at the inquest into the death of a serving prisoner has today recorded a verdict of suicide. We've been bringing you the latest from Douglas Courthouse all this week. And before we speak to our news editor Tessa Hawley, a reminder that this story contains information you may find distressing. Now, Tessa, can you tell us a little bit more about what happened today?
So, as you know, on Monday, a jury was impanelled to hear the evidence in the inquest of Christopher Peter Corkill. Now, we've talked a lot about him this week. He was a 46-year-old man who was found dead in his cell at the Isle of Man prison in February last year. The jury of 7 heard from a range of people, including prison officers, staff from Manx Care and the Department of Home Affairs, and a fellow prisoner. And this morning, Coroner of Inquest Graham Cook reviewed that evidence and then spent some time going through the options about the verdicts available to them.
So what was the jury able to select from?
Well, in jury inquest, the coroner directs on matters of law and the jury then decides on the appropriate verdict. Jurors were told this morning they and they alone were the judges of the evidence and that the only views that mattered were theirs. The coroner of inquest also told them, please put emotion to one side. Cool, calm and clinical judgment is what's needed from you. Jurors were advised that they could select an open verdict, determine Mr Corkill's death was an accident, a suicide, and or record a narrative decision.
So can you just explain what a narrative decision is?
So if a jury feels a short-form conclusion is not enough on its own, they can outline more descriptive factual findings as part of a narrative conclusion. But the jury in Mr Corkill's case today did not do this. They returned just 3 hours after they'd gone out to deliberate with their verdict of suicide.
Thank you, Tessa. Now, we know that this wasn't the first inquest concerning the death of a prisoner in custody, so are we expecting anything else to happen from here?
That's right, and we've heard a lot this week about 2 other deaths at the Isle of Man prison in very similar circumstances, one in 2020 and one in 2022. The coroner of inquest confirmed today he would be making some recommendations as a result of Mr Corkill's inquest and the inquest into the death of Craig Anderson, which was held in February. We're expecting those recommendations to come out perhaps sometime next month, and we will of course be keeping a close eye on what they say.
Absolutely. Tessa Hawley, thank you. Now, a global IT outage is still affecting some services on the Isle of Man. Throughout the day, Manx Care saw several GP practices hit with issues, and for a time earlier, the steam packet company informed customers it could only currently accept cash payments on board its vessels. Siobhan Fletcher has been across this story and joins me now with the latest. Siobhan, what do we know?
Yes, so Lewis, the outage has well and truly impacted businesses around the world, with banks, telecommunications companies and radio and TV broadcasters affected. But what does it all actually mean? Andy Cuff is the CEO of Computer Network Defence, which has a base in Ballasalla. I asked him to explain it in layman's terms.
Well, it's caused, ironically, by a cybersecurity firm called CrowdStrike. They've got a product which is endpoint security product. By endpoint, it means it sits on your desktops, your servers, etc. But it only affects Windows computers. Now, what's happened is that those computers with CrowdStrike cybersecurity software on them, they've performed an update, but what they've pulled down is either a corrupt or badly packaged update, which has caused their computers to fail.
Across in England not that long ago, we saw kind of hospitals hit by a cyber issue, but this today seems to have impacted all sorts really. Here on the Isle of Man, GP practices have been affected. The Steam packet have said that they have to accept cash payments only on board today.
Yeah.
So why does it impact that range of services? It's kind of seems to be non-discriminate.
It would be referred to as supply chain. So basically, with the banks, for instance, there's a lot of banks that use CrowdStrike, and so their systems have been taken down. And therefore, if I don't know whether Steam Packet are using CrowdStrike or indeed whether it's just their banking that's gone down. If that is the case, then it's not Steam Packet's issue, it's their supply chain. So it's basically their suppliers, in this case, financial.
Andy Cuff there, CEO of Computer Network Defence. So, Siobhan, is that situation now resolved?
Well, Lewis, in short, no. Cybersecurity firms CrowdStrike say they're actively working to fix the defect in the update for Microsoft Windows users, which sparked this incident. But the company's boss has admitted it could be some time before all systems are back up and running, with some experts warning that it could take up to days for big organisations to get back to normal.
Gromide, we'll keep an eye on that over the weekend then. 5:10 now. Believe it or not, we're more than 4 years on from those first COVID lockdowns in 2020. But for some Manx residents who were made to quarantine in the Comis Hotel in April and May of that year, the process of being refunded for their time there is just now getting underway. It was a recommendation from the Kate Brunner review into the Isle of Man government's handling of the COVID pandemic. I spoke with husband and wife, Dan and Kat, about the 2 weeks they spent in the Comis with their 9-month-old baby.
When we got there, we thought, oh, this is lovely. This will be like a little holiday. And it really wasn't. You felt very restricted. The security guard had to come to the door, knock on the door to let us out for our exercise hour. Again, it was very surreal because you think, oh, that's not too bad. But when you're in that situation, you're sort of waiting at the door like 5 minutes before, like, am I allowed out now? So, yeah, it felt very, very weird. And it got very tiresome very quickly.
We were the only one, that group, that had a baby. And our son was teething at the time. So he was very loud, very grumpy. And being in a room with 2 weeks with a teething baby is challenging.
He would cry well into the night because he wasn't happy. He was also frustrated to the point where we had the room above us. They actually phoned down to make sure we were okay. It was very difficult doing it with the baby. I mean, it was just difficult for us, but then the little one, he did get very frustrated as well.
How much was the bill for the Comis Hotel and coming back through that route?
For the two of us, because they didn't charge anything for the little one, was $17.50.
We're going through, obviously, this refund process now. How have you found that process so far?
I've been dealing with the process myself, and they've been very nice. They've been very nice and very responsive, and they're asking questions, which is good. They have asked for a bit of detail. Recently asked for detail of how it was paid. It was quite a lump sum of money. I didn't want to pay it to anyone. So I'm going to make sure. So I understand that process.
Honestly, we didn't think we'd actually ever get that money back. So if they ask us to fill in XYZ, we fill in the XYZ because we're just so relieved that there is a refund process. A lot of the ex-residents of Comis have actually done a lot of hard work to get this done, and we're really grateful that there is a positive outcome for us.
Imagine that. Kat and Dan there, 5:12 now. The company behind plans for a wind farm 6 miles off the east coast has launched a series of public consultation open days at Laxey. The well-attended event in the Laxey Glen Pavilion provided detailed information about the proposed More Vannin scheme, including images of how the wind farm may look from the shore. Simon Richardson went along and he joins me now in the studio.
Thanks, Lewis. Well, I arrived at the event just over an hour before it was due to close at 7 o'clock. There was a steady flow of people who took the opportunity to engage with members of the Orsted team. Now, leading the Orsted contingent was Project Director John Galloway. He told me he'd been pleased with the turnout and with what he felt had been a generally positive response. He did concede, however, that the main concern among people was that the turbines what they would actually look like just 6 miles from the shore.
The biggest impact is the visual impact. We're going to see this wind farm from the east coast. It's inside the 12-mile limit of the national waters, and this is the first time we've been able to show more on that. So we've got our virtual reality headsets that let people see the wind farm from 4 locations on the east coast, and the photography as well as part of the environmental assessment. The most important thing, I think, is people need to access either the virtual town hall or come to the events if they're going to see that. And I think, again, I would just stress that people must feed back what they think of that through the form, so that we take account of it, and then when we come to refine our plans before submitting them next year, we actually take account of people's views and try as best we can to mitigate it. But I think there's no getting away from the fact it's where it is. It's the Isle of Man's first offshore wind farm.
Now, you've been very honest about it, about the visual impact, and the photographs around here make it very clear. I guess that is a significant compromise when you're in a beauty spot like this.
It is, but I think what we have to bear in mind is there is a real emphasis now on offshore wind in all of the neighbouring nations. What we are saying is let's let the island take part now, in part of that revolution. Let's have some of the power, so we hope to bring the link to the Isle of Man for up to 100 megawatts of power into the grid here, and that would be a secure supply of renewable energy direct into the Manx grid. And let's export a big chunk of that power to the UK and get the revenue back to the island and all the benefits that come from what's happening.
So that was John Galloway from Orsted. Well, I managed to speak to a number of people, though not many wanted to be recorded. Views, it's fair to say, were quite polarised. Concerns expressed included visual impact and cost. That's both in terms of the creation of the wind farm and the price they'd have to pay for the electricity generated. A few were happy to chat, though, as they left, and this is what they told me.
I think it's going to be the biggest piece of environmental vandalism I've ever seen. And the Isle of Man is heading for bankruptcy with this. We just came in on the tram from Maccled, and I looked out the window at that beautiful scenery that the visitors come and look at and we're all so used to. And we're going to be looking at windmills the entire length of that journey to Onken. That alone would turn it down for me.
I can say that 10 times over. I just think it's just vandalism of the highest order.
And you're as green as they come, aren't you?
Yeah, we both are.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would just completely destroy the Isle of Man.
Yeah, it looks quite interesting. I think visibly it'll probably get accepted over the years. They've been around for a long while. They're just accepted, aren't they? I think it's a big step towards green. It's probably the major thing you can do, really. I suppose it's how it works out financially with government and what it's going to cost us. And I suppose the deal's to be done yet.
So just a taste there, Lewis, of what some people thought. And I have to say it was an impressive event with plenty of visuals and the chance to hold open and frank discussions with the Orsted people, of which there were quite a few. The roadshow, if I can call it that, has now moved on to Ramsey today. It's open until 7 o'clock this evening and it's in the old courthouse.
Grummayed, thank you very much and happy birthday, Simon Richardson.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Taking a look at the business news now, Castletown-based wealth platform Arden International has once again been awarded a B rating, which equates as a strong rating for financial strength by AKG. And they've also reaffirmed Arden's maximum 5 stars for service. This means Arden has the highest combined rating of any international platform reviewed by AKG. The report noted the benefits to Arden of being part of the wider International Finance Group Limited. It also noted how replatforming Arden in 2020 had been a success, and feedback on service from advisors is reported as excellent. The latest stock market report now from Ramsey Crookall, and UK and European stocks were mostly lower. The dollar was steady and poised to snap a 2-week losing run today as US labour and manufacturing data kept traders pondering on when and by how much the Federal Reserve would cut rates this year. Oil prices were little changed as a strong dollar and concern over top oil importer China's economy were countered by a tighter supply outlook. A barrel of Brent down 0.94% to $83.96. Gold prices dipped down to 1.69% to $2,403. That's as the dollar gained and profit-taking kicked in following bullion's all-time peak hit earlier this week, which was fueled by rising expectation of US interest rate cuts in September. At the close, the FTSE 100 down 0.73% to 8,145. The DAX down 0.96% to 18,178. And 45 minutes ago, the Dow Jones down 0.91% to 40,295. The S&P 500 down 0.4% to 5,522. And the Nasdaq down 0.41% to 17,797. British pound sterling trading at 1.291 US dollars and 1.186 euros.
I'm running late again. Do you know where I put my car keys?
In the fridge.
Where's my phone?
Under the dog basket.
Bye.
You haven't forgotten that we're seeing Ramsey Crookall later?
Oh, no, of course not. 5 p.m. is it?
2:45.
I'll be there.
Life is busy. That's why Ramsey Crookall's team takes time to help you make a mindful investment decision, considering all the options, giving you full control of your financial future. Less stress, more assurance.
Forgot to put my shoes on.
See how we can make your money work for you. call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
We'll head down to the roads then. In Onkenall this week, of course, for resurfacing. The main road through the village is one way for traffic heading in a northbound direction. The road is closed to southbound traffic heading towards Douglas between the post office and Corkills roundabout. And on Sunday, the road will close in both directions for work to continue from 7 a.m. until no later than 11 p.m. In Laxey, temporary lights on Pinfold Hill near the turn for Lonnon Church Road, 24 hours a day for work on the pavement, and temporary lights on Ramsey Road as well at the Minorca Hill Junction, 24 hours a day for 3 separate phases of drainage installation. Up in Ramsey, Station Road is closed for drainage work, and in Castletown, until today, temporary lights were on Victoria Road at the roundabout with the harbour, 24 hours a day for gas repairs. Something to keep in mind this weekend, the Viking longboat races take place in Peel tomorrow. There'll be traffic restrictions around parts of East Quay and the Promenade between 9:30 tomorrow morning and 5 o'clock. Because of this, there'll also be some alterations to bus services. Now, a few delays over at the airport today, as we've been hearing. The latest is the 5:10 EasyJet flight to Bristol, now due out at 20 to 6. The 5:30 Manchester flight due out now at 20 past 6. And the 6 o'clock Liverpool flight delayed until 5:30. On the sailings, the Manannan arriving in Liverpool at 5:45 to 6. And the Manxman will be back here from Heysham at 6 o'clock on the dot.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside.
Now over to Braddon Commissioners, which hopes to have building underway on the access road for the Roundhouse Community Centre by the end of the year. Chair Andrew Jessup says there's currently a delay on documents being signed, but doesn't think this will affect the process.
Well, we had to petition the Department of Infrastructure for permission to buy the land from the DHSC. That permission has now come through, so it's now just a case of waiting for the actual conveyance of the land through to us. One of those situations where at the moment that we've got running side by side the conveyance of the land, which is obviously what we want, but there's been quite a considerable delay in getting the conveyance sorted. It was suggested that we had a licence so that we could actually at least get onto the land to start the work pending the conveyance of the land. But it's got to the situation whereby still in a slight disagreement over the wording of the licence, but the draft conveyance has already been prepared. So, I think both sides now are thinking, let's just get the conveyance done and we don't have to worry about a licence and what the wording is in the licence. And it just seems to be the usual thing. There's a bit of a logjam in the Attorney General's chambers, and until that can somehow be resolved, we're in the situation where, again, we don't actually have permission to go on the land to start the work, even though they should have started work on Monday. We've always said that we were prepared to have a separate access right back to when we first took the land, but obviously at the time of planning in 2016 there was no other alternative, and the agreement was made that access would be through the hospital estate grounds. At the moment it's let's try and resolve, get the land transferred to us, get the contractor in place and get on with it, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll have a new access road. Well, I'd like to think it'd be by the end of this year, but maybe that's been a bit optimistic at the way things are going at the moment, but we'll certainly do our best to try and get it done by the end of this year.
Chair of Braddon Commissioners Andrew Jessup there. The time now 5:23. And tonight marks the start of a 3-day pre-season tournament hosted by FC Isle of Man at the Bowl, which will also involve 3 English non-league clubs. This evening's opening match sees the Ravens face National League Northside Chester at 7 o'clock. Here's FC Isle of Man manager Paul Jones.
Maybe people weren't aware, but we played Brackley from the same league a couple of weeks ago and did it very well against them. But Chester are further along in their pre-season. They played some more, well, they've actually played pre-season games, whereas Brackley was our first pre-season game. So Chester are going to be starting to build towards the start to their season with a view, I'm sure, to try and get out of that division and get into the National League. They're going to be right at it, I'm sure. And, the first game of the tournament, they won't have too many weary legs, and I'm sure they're going to give us a really difficult challenge, and we will do well to stay in the game, and we might have to suffer a little bit out of possession, but that's okay. That's good for us, and when we have the ball, we need to look after it, but it's going to be very difficult.
Looking at this summer festival of football in general, other good teams for English non-league system with the likes of
of Chester, Radcliffe and also Lancaster City as well. So what do you think this says about FC Isle of Man, that these other teams higher in the pyramid in the non-league system at the moment are looking at FC Isle of Man thinking this is a worthwhile test for us?
It's important, I think we gain credibility the longer we're in the pyramid and the better that we do. People see we're attempting to do things in the right way. I think we've got a relatively good reputation within non-league football in the Northwest in terms of how we conduct ourselves and the playing standards that we've got. Many people remember the old Calls and Steam Packet tournaments that we ran. It was professional teams that used to come to the Isle of Man, and Chester was one of those teams back in the day, and we get the opportunity to test ourselves at that level, and they get the opportunity to have a really intense period of time together playing football, but also getting to know each other ahead of their season. So we've wanted to put something like this on since the club started. Hopefully this is the beginning of something that at least stays at 4 teams and maybe gets a little bit bigger.
That's FC Isle of Man manager Paul Jones speaking to Manx Radio sports editor Rob Pritchard, who joins us now with today's sporting news. Faster my, Rob.
Faster my, Lewis. Well, we'll start with motorsport. Manx TT competitor Connor Cummins will receive backing from FHO Racing at next weekend's Armoy Road Races. The team will supply Cummins with a BMW M1000RR Superbike for the meeting in Northern Ireland, with the rider having undertaken a private test on the machine this afternoon. For the team, it'll be a first experience of the event, whilst Cummins has previously raced there in 2012 and 2013. Speaking on this latest agreement, Connor says, "I'm absolutely over the moon to be given the opportunity to ride the FHO Racing BMW. I really can't thank Faye, Darren and the entire team enough for this chance." Well, the Ramsey competitor's last outing in road racing was at the 2024 Isle of Man TT races with the Malenko by Paget's Motorcycles team. There, he retired from the opening Supersport and Superbike races before withdrawing from the event with immediate effect. At the time, no additional details were given on the reasons behind that decision. Well, the 2024 Armoy Road Races are scheduled to take place on the 26th and 27th of July. Staying on 2 wheels, in fact, in cycling, it's once again job done for Mark Cavendish, who's completed the latest mountainous section of the Tour de France today inside the time cut. The Manx missile arrived home at the end of stage 19 alongside teammate Case Boll, just under 44 minutes behind stage winner and race leader Tadej Pogacar. Elsewhere, young Manx rider Zachary Walker finished 30th in today's third stage of the Valle d'Aosta under-23 event in Italy this afternoon. And finally, in athletics, one of the Isle of Man's up-and-coming prospects is through to the finals in this year's European Under-18 Championships in Slovakia. Regan Corrin, competing in the men's high jump event, has cleared a height of 2.05 metres to reach the final of the class, with the tournament at Banksa Bystrica running until Sunday. This experience is adding to what's already been an impressive 12 months or so for Corrin, who took gold in the men's high jump at the 2023 Island Games in Guernsey, and last month became the first ever Manx competitor to surpass the 7-metre mark in the long jump.
Goromaya, thank you, Rob Pritchard. More from Rob shortly. That's it from Update for this evening and for this week. I'll be back at the same time on Monday. If you want to listen back to tonight's episode, it will be available as a podcast at manxradio.com in the next half hour. Rob returns next with Friday Sport Preview, and after 6, it's Greatest Hits with Chris Kinley, so stick around. Whatever you're up to this weekend, I'm wishing you all the best, sunshine or otherwise.